Hey everybody, this episode today is about connection, and my guest is Lukasz. And Lukasz is, well, he was head boy at the Royal School, which is around the corner from me. So in terms of connection, I felt a connection immediately because I used to go swimming at the Royal School very often because they had a 25-metre swimming pool in the area. I felt like Lukasz and I had a bit of a bond to begin with, which was really nice. But Lukasz is a guy, he's an entrepreneur that really believes in the power of network building, the power of connecting with people, and how entrepreneurship is a real people game. He's got a background in finance and capital markets, which is probably not what you'd expect when you first hear someone that's so EQ based, let's just say. But yeah, background in finance, found his way into healthcare through a cancer story that he has personally. And yeah, he's got degrees from Warwick, London School of Economics, and has gone on to found Trustedoctor, which has done really well. He's now an advisor for Informatica, building venture and AI drug discovery. He's done loads of stuff, done a really cool journey, a really nice guy, a really good guy in the space, doing some really interesting things. So hope you enjoy this one. Lukasz, what a background. First of all, welcome to the Healthtech Podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Beautiful intro. Thank you. Very nicely sincere.
There was a lot to get through there, wasn't there? But all incredibly relevant. I mean, I've got to ask you, man, like growing up in Wolverhampton, not many guests that I have on here I can talk about growing up in Wolves with, but tell me, how do you find yourself at the Royal School, being from Poland?
So it's a beautiful story. So I came to the UK when I was 17 at the back of a scholarship. Actually, the Royal School provided a scholarship for sixth form. And so I came before being sort of, being still quite a youngster. And it was quite surreal. It was the school was very international back then. Now it's a free school. Back then it was a private school. Some of the most amazing friendships I've made were there. I mean, it was an incredible experience. As you mentioned, I was a head boy. It was just a beautiful story. Fun fact as well, we started to be really big on basketball when I was there. It just so happened to be that I played, some of the Chinese kids played, and then we had some coaches. So after me, they reached like semi-finals of UK competition, which was quite incredible, given that they've already been really good at swimming. They've got a really good sort of football backbone. Yeah, so it was just great. I come back often. I used to be until recently a governor of the school, always trying to give back, because I think it's just I've just been so grateful to be given the opportunity, and to be honest, actually, it shaped me a lot, and I derived a lot of qualities that I'm sort of deploying right now.
Cool, man, that's awesome. So tell me, after the Royal School, you've gone to University of Warwick, you've done London School of Economics, you've entered finance, you've built and exited a health tech company, you're now moving into biotech. It's sort of like the, I don't know, it's like the ideal path, that to learn how money moves and to understand finance, and then to apply that to healthcare and build a company, exit, and it's the coming together of a lot of stuff that, and I've mentioned this before, we've had a couple of people with finance backgrounds that seem to approach building companies slightly differently, in my opinion. It seems that the people that have finance backgrounds tend to have a real understanding of, firstly, how a business actually needs to operate and what the value of money actually is, which actually sounds really strange, but the value of cash, the value of cash flow, the value of capital and equity and all these things, which means that quite often the businesses that are built by people from finance are quite robust, but also they know how to exit. And I think that's fascinating to me, that often the way that companies are built by finance people is with exit in mind. So it's a really interesting journey to learn finance for first, and in a much tinier way. me shadowing people in finance in my background and knowing a little tiny bit about how finance worked helped me massively. So I can't imagine like how much an understanding of capital markets and everything would truly help. But yeah, talk me through it, man. Like tell me the whole story.
So it's great that you say this, because there were some really good positives, and there were also some sort of funny realizations. So I was in capital markets. I was trading structured credit. So if you remember that film Big Short, Ryan Gosling plays the key role. That was my market, asset-backed securities. So yes, from a point of view of confidence and just being able to pitch yourself to investors, yes, that was somewhat easier. But on the other hand, when you're in a big corporation, when everything is kind of done for you, and you just you're a tiny particle of the big machinery, you're realizing when you come into the business, you have to do it all, right? So you can't just hide behind the big logo so it was striking. And also I think on a fundraising front, when we got the money very, very quickly. The whole story started actually in Harvard, where Greg was doing his kind of PLD, which is like an executive MBA. We had a beautiful idea at the back of the Real Cancer story. We thought, okay, let's present the story to the whole cohort of his group. And then basically two guys stood up. One said, well, I want to be your medical co-founder. I'm a famous neurosurgeon in Switzerland. And the other guy goes, well, I'm a private equity, but I have a bunch of guys that want to invest. So we'll give you the cash. So it was kind of easy at the start, but then eventually, you realize that, it's not so easy. And I think the problem with people from finance, I mean, it depends how you define finance. If I had a more accounting background, maybe it would have been a lot more useful. But being in capital markets, being in sort of trading, we underestimated the level of complexity of running a business. And also just, when you step away from finance, you realize you're in real world, you have to hire people. And there's some beautiful people that you cannot afford to pay a lot. Whereas, in finance, everyone gets paid really nicely. It's all kind of a little bubble. So in a way, it was humbling. We thought, okay, this is real life. And when we got the money, we thought, okay, let's do this. And I guess, but I guess maybe another thing that was very good about us in terms of our background, we were very resilient. We thought, okay, we're not going to let this die, because we were on the brink of collapse many times, right? We're running out of money, but I think you just have to have that perseverance that we probably got a little bit from finance as well. We said, okay, even if the times are tough, we have to be strong. And maybe last point to make is, when I was in capital markets, I was actually building different desks. So I built a desk in a brokerage house, and I was building a structured credit desk in a bank. So not realizing I was actually an entrepreneur back then already. So I had to, building a little desk in a big bank, we had to have, all the sort of qualities. We were building the franchise clients. We had to be mindful of the balance sheet, the cost of funding and everything. So I was already kind of, testing the water, not realizing that this is really entrepreneurial. So when I stepped into Trustedoctor, I thought, that actually works. It's kind of the same playbook to a certain degree. So I'm grateful. Some people always ask me, would you have done this earlier on? Yes, probably I would if the stars really aligned. But having gone through some corporate experience and then stepping into business with a real story, I think that was really beneficial. And that's and then obviously, yes, I'm really grateful that I've seen the business from zero to an exit. It's many times I see great businesses that maybe don't go that far, or maybe they've got a lot longer to see that through. This has been an incredible journey. Really grateful, and the timing was excellent. And also, I always found that when you work in finance, you're contributing, but you're not changing the world as much as you would or you could otherwise. Whereas, a Trustedoctor basically started off as a telemedicine and oncology. We were pioneers. none of the oncologists wanted to do video calls back then, and just second medical opinions where you can actually ask an expert was unheard of. But we were always impacting people. We were helping them, and that gives me that extra fuel in the morning, or at night when I was really sort of, when it was tough. And then I'm thinking, well, we're doing this for people. So and the whole story about pivoting was also, in a way, we wanted to solve the real problem, and then we were just realizing that there were some problems along the way that we need to be solved. So we went actually full circle with the business model. So we went from marketplace. So we started off as a marketplace of great neurosurgeons. So we had top neurosurgeons around the world, and then we moved on to a SaaS for great hospitals, both UK, but also internationally, Switzerland, US. And then eventually we're realizing, and this was a big realization for us, first of all, you have to go through all the payers very quickly. And we realized that insurance is the payer, because not only, insurance pays for our services and it fits well what we do. Secondly, I think, the problem with the patients that we had was we could have connected you to the best oncologist around, best oncologist in the world, but then you would get that opinion, and then what do you do next? You would still need the money to execute, because many of those drugs, many of those therapies are internationally. You have to travel, you have to pay for some of those things. So creating insurance. It's obviously a game change, because now we can, for all the 4 million people that you mentioned, obviously we're insuring, it's a protection insurance, we're insuring healthy people, but God forbid if something happens to them, we have the ability to give them flights, hotels, and the full treatment up to £2 million, which is incredible. From my perspective, having gone through so many patient journeys, having seen the struggle, because it's emotionally draining, but financially as well, it's a struggle, and so in the end we achieve goals from our personal point of view, having gone through the full circle, but also we left legacy that it's impactful, that the company's still doing really well. It's private equity owned. It's growing really fast. I'm really, really proud of it. And obviously Trustedoctor, as part of the group, because we merged with a company called Further, has become a backbone for anything that we do digitally, whether it is starting from claims all the way to kind of providing different digital products, dashboards to our members, cross-selling and just navigating. Because I think the big thing that we found, actually the reason we found the company was Greg's mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He was a banker at the time as well. We were both in London, and he went around the block navigating, and he thought that it was so hard to access the right treatment. In the end, he knew so much that if we would have known this at the beginning, he would have taken different approaches. So I think it was a real problem. And then in the end, we left a legacy. I certainly stepped away from the sale, and then just I'm going to the next one, but having that good feel factor.
It's a beautiful story, man, and there's so much in there that I want to talk to you about. I want to first take you all the way back to the start of your journey. And you mentioned that you were building a desk at a finance company, which I'm sure me and many of my listeners won't know that phrase or what that means, but it sounds to me like you were just building a function, right? You said you had to find funding and customers and essentially all of the bits and bobs to formulate a business, and that's what in part gave you the confidence when you started Trustedoctor. Hey, I've done this before, and you had that sort of familiarity. I think that's a really interesting concept, because one thing that I find is even in my own journey, and I know this of other people too, that often it's about belief that you can do something and start a company and solve that problem and build a little team to do it initially. And people can often struggle to find the confidence to do those things. And I think you're right. I think that people can find these proxies in their own life and in their own work and in their own experiences that can give them the confidence to do that. And it's interesting to me that you you seem to only have that reflection after you started Trustedoctor, actually, and you were like, oh, I have actually done this before. Like, actually, no, this is quite familiar. And, maybe I would have done this anyway, or either way, or maybe this was a different path for me, or I would have ended up here anyway, sort of thing was the vibe I got from you. And it seems to be the case that entrepreneurial people will find entrepreneurial things to do, even in their current jobs, where perhaps it might not feel that entrepreneurial, i.e. in finance. Actually, there are the entrepreneurial bits to find. And so I think there are probably people listening that do have aspirations to start their own businesses, start their own companies, become that entrepreneur, and they might be looking for that confidence. So I don't know if you could say anything about that part of your life and maybe just reflect on that for me and give some advice to people that are entrepreneurial and frustrated, or entrepreneurial and doing entrepreneurial things in their job, and perhaps have that idea but don't know where to start, or are looking for the confidence. I don't know what you would say to them.
No, this is a great point. And I think this is the backbone for me in terms of what I would say is I've always been very big on my network. I love people, love connecting with people, whether it is the people from high school, university, the Polish diaspora, entrepreneurs, finance. So I've just always been obsessed about just connecting with people. And I think that was my currency. So actually the reason I got into structured credit was one of my best friends at the back of the financial crisis. He was a top dog in this arena. He said to me, I was in consulting at the time. He said to me, just drop what you're doing and join us and learn about trading bonds. And then because he was such a great mentor and a friend, I said, okay, as long as you're sure about this. He was like, I can see you're a better salesman than a consultant. You've got such a vast network. You'd be great at it. And he was right. And so, so when I came to finance, I had to quickly learn on the fly. It was stressful, but I thrive in that sort of chaos. And actually, when you're in the startup, it's the same thing. It's a chaos. And also you need to tap into different people. Because for any element of your journey, you need different people. And I was also very lucky that loads of people came onto my pathway, that I ended up doing business with. So structured credit was a friend who brought me in and then created a monster, if you like. I was really good at what I was doing because, they had so much faith in me. Just to qualify, I came into finance as a kind of a VP level with no experience. I mean, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. I have to accelerate myself in 6 months. I was going to meetings, sometimes not understanding what I was doing, and I quickly had to. So that's why I actually went to LSE. I quickly signed up for LSE. It was a part-time master's, so I can sort of I can accelerate. And also, I wrote my dissertation on the bonds I was trading because I thought it would be so fun to call up the clients that hate me. The clients that don't like me. I said to them, potentially like French clients. I said, look, you don't want my bonds. I know that, but I've got a discourse. I've got this really nice topic about the bonds that we're trading. Would you give me a hand? And they loved it. They were like, this is amazing. And so you got to try everything. So, for instance, with my American clients, the big thing was basketball. I set it up something called structured credit basketball, and we used to play once a month. I'm really, really passionate about the sport, and they loved it. When they got their elbows down. When I was driving, they thought it was like the real deal. They didn't want my dinners and nice chat. They wanted the competitiveness, and so everyone, there's different ways for different things. So what I would say, going back to your question, is. If you put yourself out there, and I appreciate not everyone is maybe as open as I was, you meet great people and then you align, because I met with Greg, and it was a beautiful alignment. I mean, he was my best friend, but also he's a trader. I was a sales. So in a financial markets term, we were the perfect fit. And then we realized that I love doing business development and network development. He loves doing finance and digital tech. He's more kind of technical. He's very in-depth guy. So I was really lucky. I got that at the beginning. And then obviously as we were building the team, we just managed to come across some beautiful people that we're still friends and we're still very close. So yeah, if you put yourself out there, you meet people that are that that you can join forces, and I wouldn't have done this myself alone. You have to have the team. So now when I'm doing this the second time, it's again, just finding the great people. But it so happened to be that I'm always doing businesses with friends. So if you want to do business with me, it's likely that we're going to become friends, because that's how I operate. I can't do pleasantries, and I'm the kind of and I appreciate different cultures. Being in UK, for instance, I had to learn that you had to earn your trust, and it took time. I remember in high school with my English friends, I was like, on the first day, I was like, okay, let's light it up, and they were like, no, it's not. Let's not light it up. We don't know you, But I think it pays off, and also it just pays off to be helpful. I was doing loads of pro bono stuff always. I was running some organizations. I was always spending loads of time doing something for free, running a team or running a club. And I think that also pays off because then you meet people that appreciate who you are. So the network is key. I think aligning with the team is vital. And but you're right. It's something that you said earlier on about the confidence. I think, and actually going back to the Wolverhampton days, I think these guys gave me confidence. I come from a lower middle class background in Poland, and I came to the UK I was probably the poorest student in this private school, but I never forget how my friends used to say to me, and we used to have this discourse. I said, life is really, really bad because I don't have the laptop and everything has to be word processed. How do I reconcile that? And I remember one of my best friends, who was a really rich, comes from a rich family. He says to me, he said, dude, money is the last thing that you should be worrying about. This is like you just have to think about greater things. And I remember it was liberating. I came to uni and I then came to industry thinking, I'm not going to be worrying about the money so much. I'm going to be worrying about, development and making sure that I'm a good person. I've got some great values in me and things like that. So yeah, you need to have the confidence, and once you have the team, the confidence, some of that backbone in the network, I think anyone can do business. And obviously, yes, you could risk yourself a little bit here and there. But you will make the same mistake. So you just have to kind of, jump. And I appreciate that was really tough for me because when I was in banking, I had a stable paycheck, really nice salary, nice bonus. And me jumping into startup, it was, we paid ourselves nothing. It was just crazy. And I've just realizing but there's another twist. Sorry, I'm jumping, but there's another twist to the story. I've never actually said this on air. I actually went to uni. So hear me out. 2002, I came to uni with no money, and I was an overseas student. I went to Warwick. I didn't tell them that I don't have the money, and I arrived the first year without paying, and I was dragged into fees committees and stuff like that. They used to set a precedent after me that every international student should need to show them the bank accounts before accepting the offer. I ended up paying it all back, and some of the professors really helped me to stay alive. But I went to uni, and I'll tell you why I'm saying there is a parallel here. I was so resourceful in my first year. I lost all my hair. But I was so good at it. Like I was so on point because you had to survive. So, when we were on the brink of collapse in the startup, there was 1 or 2 times we had no money. The same instinct switched on. It was crazy. It was like, I'm like feeling like I'm again in my first year of university and I just have to deliver. And some people, this may cripple some of the people. For me, it was very good. It was really helped me in life to be a bit more resilient. But I appreciate, it's not the easiest thing to do. And in hindsight, it's a nice story. But back then, it was kind of scary.
It's a beautiful story, man. And there's so much in there about resourcefulness and just everything that goes into survival and making it as you have, which you should be incredibly proud of. The thing that I want to highlight, though, is the word that you said, I think, most in that entire story, which was people. I think you've got Well, you said at the start, actually, that network and connecting people was your currency and still is seemingly your currency for developing people around you that can help you and you can help them. So creating this community. And I can see so many parallels in that with how we're trying to do things too. And, you've been to our events and the things that we put on for the space in order to foster that community. And it was the same for me at the start, like I used to hate networking. I used to not be very good at it. You seem quite extroverted. And actually, I imagine going up to people that you don't know might be relatively easy for you. Well, it certainly wasn't for me. So I used to set myself these little challenges of like, if I was at an event and I needed to like speak to people, I'd try and find one person to add value to, and then I'd allow myself to leave. And then it was 2 people and then 3 people. And like, and the more people I knew, obviously the easier it was to add value because I would connect people. And by connecting one person to another and they receive some value, automatically you feel good and you're perceived by them as being able to introduce them to good people. So that's a good thing. And I started in a really similar place. And I think one thing that hits me about your story as well is that you do actually seem to genuinely care. Like it does matter to you that you are surrounded by nice people doing nice things, and that because you talked about values and that side of things as well. And so I think there's so much about connecting people that requires you to be genuine as well. Because sometimes you connect people not expecting anything in return and not getting anything in return. And that's incredibly common. That's more common than doing an intro and ever getting anything out of it. And I think you have to be the sort of person that just genuinely wants to do that and is in a place where you can sort of selflessly build community in that way. So I think that is so important. I do just want to come back to one thing though that you said really, really near the beginning of your journey, of that story of your journey, because you mentioned this point at which you were going to meetings with no idea what you were talking about. Like, I think that is so relatable. And I'll give you an example, right? So when I started at the Digital Health London accelerator, which was like, relatively prestigious accelerator, like at the very beginning, there was no other sort of NHS accelerator at the time. It was like super innovative and all that sort of stuff. I'd had this background of quality improvement, so helping loads of people like bits and bobs in the hospital and writing business cases, this, that, and the other. So I knew the finance world a bit, but I didn't know the finance world massively. I didn't know sort of the broader sort of NHS finance type stuff. I knew it sort of local to a hospital of like how they'd buy a technology or startup or device or something. Anyway, they kept like in the induction week, they kept using the word procurement. And I had literally no understanding of what this word procurement meant, which is like quite funny that I'd done pretty much, or I'd done so much like quality improvement that, but for whatever reason, I'd never come across the word procurement, or I might have done and just not asked what it was for fear of looking silly. They kept using this word procurement, and I was like, what on earth does this procurement word? And on the first day, it was used again and again and again. And I couldn't get my phone out to Google it because it was like I was sat next to people that I was going to be working with. So I was like, had to just like completely blag it that I just knew what this word procurement meant. And of course, I now know what procurement means, but I can very much relate to getting yourself into a position where you're in a meeting with no idea what you're doing. And in part, like, that's kind of what building a career is about. Like, you need to put yourself in these rooms where you aren't anywhere near the smartest person and not anywhere near the person with the most knowledge. And in fact, you might want to be the opposite because actually you're going to do the most growth. And so, yeah, I think very, very, very relatable, that, mate. But I love that whole people thing. I love how that's your currency. I love how you've managed to actually turn that into tangible value and actually throughout your life, not only survival, as you've quite rightly put it, which I don't think is grandiose at all to say that, coming over from Poland, making a financial living at all to eat and to get through university and to do all those things. And it's interesting to me that your professors were the ones helping you by the end of it, even though it was the university that you duped in the first place. I think that is fascinating and says a lot for how you build relationships. But yeah, it's interesting, man.
It was incredible, but everyone was really but yeah, you have to you have to have that positivity. And I remember, and you rightly said, I've always been kind of true to myself, right? True to my values. And I'll give you even like the pointers, sometimes we are judged, or sometimes we're sidelined by certain biases or things around us. But I was always the guy. So I'll give you an example, people, some of my friends went to more prestigious schools in nicer places than Wolverhampton, and they used to laugh. I was like, no, Wolverhampton is my place. I really love it, and I big Wolverhampton everywhere. In fact, when I'm on the call with a healthcare provider up north, and they sometimes joke, "Oh, you guys in London, you have no idea what it's like to be up north." I was like, "Oh." I was like, excuse me, I went to school in Wolverhampton, and then there is silence. And so for instance, Wolverhampton is it's a big thing for me. Like I genuinely relate. I used to work in JD Wetherspoons next to the station, Moon Under Water, meeting people, talking to them.
I know,
and they
used
to say sometimes to me. They used to say to me sometimes, "Oh, Poles are taking our jobs," but I would take that discourse. I said, "Well, let's have a talk about that," and I love that. And the second thing is, for instance, my Polish network. Some of my friends that came from Poland, they've done well. They forgot about it. They say, "Oh, I want to be a bit more international. I don't want to be Polish," because Polish, that means like, it's got some connotations to good builders and all that stuff. And I'm like, no. I'm going to big it up. For me, this is important. And now, actually, 20 years later, when you talk about AI, the best AI engineers out there are Polish. And, so we're kind of, there's so many beautiful things that are coming out of Poland. I'm not saying I'm intolerant or non-sensitive to other nations, because I've got friends from all walks of life, and I'm really grateful that I have that diversity. But I'm big on, I actually did the post this morning about the economic patriotism. I believe in that. I believe in, as a British and Polish national, Polish national, but British by passport. I feel like there's a duty in big this up. People say, "Oh, Brexit, yeah, we've done this." It's a shame that Brexit happened, but we just have to deal with it now, right? And so for me, I'm always like this kind of soldier, ambassador. So I think this is really important. The minute you're very clear on your values, people start relating to you, and people say, "Well, I like that," because I think we're at this stage in the world that everyone is craving for something genuine. And you mentioned this at the beginning, that I come across this way. Thank you very much. I mean, I try to be like that, because I think I don't want to mold into something else. I want to be I want to be sticking to, I want to stick to, things I believe. And even if sometimes it is a bit tougher, going, you were talking about networking. I mean, obviously I speak English, but, nowhere near as flawlessly as you. And sometimes, I was locked in a room with people who are, beautifully spoken. And I had to, it was a challenge to say something really profoundly differently, or profoundly interesting, or I remember making a good joke. It was like a skill that I always wanted to master. You have a room full of really tight people, and then suddenly you come up with something really disarming, and everyone laughs, and it says, "Oh, this guy is really, really cool." So it's but if you're pretending to be someone else, that never, I believe it never works. So that was kind of always my currency, and I want to stick this way. I hope it will never change. So I actually had the other day I had a friend calling me saying, it's quite funny that you've had your exit, and you've had your other things, and this does not change you. You're still the same guy, talks a lot, and being so kind of fired up and humble at the same time, because I am humble. I never forget how what's important. I know what's going on back home, but also I've got loads of friends who took a different path, and also I know so many cancer patient stories that are that is inspirational. So so for me, I always have my feet on the ground, thinking you live the day like it's your last, kind of thing.
That's nice, man. I want to hear the story of Trustedoctor now. It's a nice segue into it. You talked about Greg's mother actually having pancreatic cancer, obviously a devastatingly rapid, often cancer that can claim you very quickly, leaves a lot of confusion and just a lot of terrible emotion in its wake, often for families and that kind of thing. And Trustedoctor obviously coming out of that. So talk to me about the founding of Trustedoctor, about the idea, and I guess this is you trying to put into the world what Greg and yourself wish existed, I guess?
Yeah, so it was a great story because actually we started off. So the premise was we want to access doctors globally because that's where, once we access them easily, we can navigate. However, the first idea was actually to rate doctors. And I remember we built this engine. We scraped, we took a bunch of coders and we said, okay, let's scrape everything that we know about those great doctors from PubMed, from all sorts of places, conferences, and create a database that we can rate doctors per country. And I remember Greg went to Harvard and then he presented the engine, and then this neurosurgeon stands up and he goes, "Oh, can you search Switzerland and neurosurgery?" So Greg searched in the engine, and the guy miraculously comes up fifth. And the first thing and it was like amazing. Everyone is clapping. This is incredible. Like we've got something, right? And the guy goes, "Well, it's all well and good, but let me tell you something about doctors. No one likes to be fifth. I'm the best, right?" And it was like, okay, absolutely. The first thing he was like, okay, so this not going to work. But he loved the idea of having the quality out there, because I think with doctors, especially with cancer, your ability, your probability of a good outcome is correlated to a greater doctor that you can access. And then we realized, and very, very quickly, we were like, okay, so we've got this, we've got the story, let's just focus on cancer. And that was the first big realization. Now then, obviously, we had zero network and no one really knew about us. So obviously, Philippe, Professor Schucht he's a famous neurosurgeon in the Inselspital in Bern. So he really helped us out. But we also had to hustle, we were known as these two Polish guys running around Harley Street. And so who are these guys? But once we convinced few really good guys, really, like the trick was to identify the best guys in their category. So the best neurosurgeon, the best, pancreatic oncologist, that kind of stuff. And then the minute you have the best, you go to others and you say, could you join our network? And they would ask, who is in the network? And I said, well, there is this guy on that guy, and then that's how it started. And people used to say to us, building a network, a premier network of really great doctors is not scalable because they're going to be in all these countries and you're just not going to make money. They were kind of right, because we were talking to the Babylon people early on, and they wanted to do this, specialist healthcare before they wanted to do GP, right? But they were telling us that the GP is a bit more scalable, right, with the AI to it. So we were like, okay, no, let's do the difficult part. Once we have the quality, we'll figure this out. I wish we maybe were more commercial from the start, but still, we built something beautiful against the odds, right? And then once we found that the insurance is the model, is the vertical, people that we connected with, they were like, we love the quality. That's what we want. In protection insurance, it's about, if you're building a global cancer insurance, you want to access the best, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, you want to go to Charité, you want to go to, Royal Marsden in London, you want to go to these best hospitals. And then we started to have that real traction that we were like, okay, we've built something beautiful, but, we should have, if we didn't have this naivety at the beginning, we wouldn't have built it. So sometimes you have to have this naivety and a passion for something, so then you can commercialize it later. So I think, that was a big realization. Obviously, we went through the pivots. So I think pivoting is very important. So, and we were trying all these different verticals, and we had to go through that journey. And the funny thing is, sometimes the best meetings that we had were the meetings with, where we thought we were meeting a potential competitor. And then we realizing we're not really a competitor, we're a complement. So we met this guy who called Darren, who built the best, the biggest concierge company in London, called Harley Street Cancer Concierge. Now it's called Reframe. He also exited that business. That business was seeded by the richest lady in Scotland, Anne Glog. And basically, when we met him, he was like, I love what you do, because I kind of wanted to do this manually. You do this digitally, right? So then he eventually became a board member, and we worked together, and we had a client in US. So all those we kind of pivoted, and then in the end, before COVID, we were working with a company called Further, because essentially they Further is a spin out of Best Doctors, and Best Doctors was bought by Teladoc in 2017. And so when we met the guys, the CEO of the company has been building Best Doctors in Europe for 20 years, right? So he understood the value of second medical opinion and the way you could, give people access to global healthcare, especially in cancer. So when we met, he was like, I'm so bought in. And then eventually, when we start working together, he was like, okay, we got to be together. We have to merge. So people think that COVID pushed us into merging. We actually had the merging on the table beforehand, but actually maybe the COVID really accelerated our process. But I think it was a beautiful story because we found a perfect alignment. So I'm a big advocate, and I'm a big advocate for merging as a way of actually accelerating your growth. Because if you think about it, we've built a telemedicine business with nice kind of verticals, but insurance was the client. So merging with a client, if you like, we probably saved ourselves 5 to 6 years to that exit, and then obviously that means that we created a category in itself. So digitally enabled cancer insurance. There's nothing like this in the world, and our business model is we sell through major insurers. For instance, in UK, and maybe this is a bit of a product placement, but you could go to someone like Aviva, and you can buy Aviva Global Doctors, and this is basically us. You can buy an add-on to your life insurance, and this is gives you that access to global care. In UK, people love the NHS, and rightly so, because I think it's an incredible institution with its pluses and minuses, but it's an incredible institution. So people really believe in the healthcare here. But in other countries, people have to go abroad to access healthcare. So there is a different narrative to selling these insurances in different countries. But the end goal is we're treating, people around the world. We're navigating healthcare, we're changing people's lives. And in the end, we were like, okay, this is a great story. And this is what, this is exactly what we wanted at the start. We wanted to access healthcare digitally, because that was the flavor of the world was coming this way. The digital transformation was already underway, but in order for you to have that full spectrum, you have to have a financial product. You have to have a means to pay for this treatment, because that's the reality. And so in a way, when I'm now doing new businesses, I'm always trying to think about an exit. Trying to think about the full cycle. Where do we want to be in the future? And also, who is the payer? Because I think that's the biggest hurdle for digital health startups. They don't really understand the payer from early on. They're building something beautiful, which is useful, but maybe no one wants to pay for it. And this is a big tragedy of digital health. We went to all these meetings with early stage VCs. No one said it's a bad idea. Right? Everyone said it's a great idea, but maybe not everyone really felt that, telemedicine oncology will pay for itself. So that was an interesting point. And maybe we should have, if we had more experience in healthcare, maybe we would have been, in a different place. But it was also quite nice to hear that, and also to adjust. So it wasn't, the first money was easy, but then raising finance, the second, third round, was much tougher. But I think it comes back to the network, and maybe what we've done actually, which was quite cool. We built a great board of directors for our, at the time, seed pre-Series A level company. So people used to laugh at us. It's like, you are such a small company, yet your board looks like $1 billion board. And actually, that proved to be a really good strategy, because when we were merging, the other party really respected our board. And in fact, our board became the group board. And so I think that was another really good thing. It's always about the network, who is advising you, who gives you credibility. And we were really grateful. So one of the person who really helped us was Dr. Annalisa Jenkins. She's quite big in biotech, but also Healthtech in London. And she really was one of those early people that really thought there's something in there. and she was just great. She was really. She's a doctor. Fun fact is she was one of the first doctors working in submarines back in '90s in UK. So it's just a really incredible person. And so we had a full board of people like that, and obviously maybe we didn't need as much, but we still wanted to have these people there. They felt they bought into a story. So all these things that you do early on that maybe are questionable, they pay off in the future. So obviously a great network, great focusing on quality, but also having those advisors, and we were ready to give them piece of the company, because we thought if we have a grassroots movement, so some of our doctors who were one of the key doctor that we had was the world's greatest neuro-oncologist, Professor Roger Stupp. He's now at Northwestern. He was a former president of ERTC. He was the person who really vouched for us. He was like, these guys are incredible. The network is solid. And we need to, the challenge was to convince him. But once we convinced them, it went from there. So there's a lot of kind of points early on what we've done well, not realizing that really they're gonna be a big advantage for us later on. As we were kind of and also now selling to private equity. We had two businesses coming together, perfect alignment, but also very big kind of versatility that for all those, let's say, old policies, we could have do digital products for them. For the new ones, we can provide something that it's not out there at all. I mean, it's fair to say insurance is also one of those lagging sectors in terms of digital transformation. So now obviously we're seeing a lot more insurtechs and things. It's just, but timing is also important, right? Right now, if I was doing a business and I'm doing a new one, I'm focusing on AI, right? Because I think that there is a merit there, not to getting into a hype, because we didn't get to telemedicine 2016 for the sake of telemedicine. We had a particular problem to solve. And when I look at AI right now in healthcare, I'm looking at specific problem that I'm trying to solve. I'm not looking at just developing something which is nice and shiny, but maybe doesn't have commercial backbone.
Before we talk about AI, I want to ask you, because you've been at the center of three things that struggle to be talked about in the same breath, which are healthcare, insurance, and finance. Now, anywhere except the UK or anywhere with a public healthcare system, those three things are probably talked about a lot more comfortably. Whereas in the UK, it's very uncomfortable to talk about healthcare and insurance. It's very uncomfortable to talk about healthcare and finance. But obviously, you've built a company that initially looked to solve the problem of I just want the best care. It started at looking at who are the best people to deliver that care. Let's rank all the surgeons, and that's how it started there. But in order to solve that problem, you've ended up in insurance, because I want the best care often means, well, you might be able to access it, but you then can't afford to pay for it. And that's where this comes in. So it is still solving that core problem. Now, you're also from a background of what sounds like moments of financial adversity. And so you're not born with a silver spoon here. You're not someone who is from wealth that is building a company for the wealthy. But you mentioned it actually when you talked about there's an issue with the fact that you need people to pay for treatment. And one of my concerns is increasingly that health tech and digital health and the business models that are being created looking for payers, another thing you mentioned, difficult to find payers, end up creating this divide and this wealth gap of is digital health actually just for the wealthy, because they're the ones that can put their hand in their pocket? And at the moment, the business models are around self-payment rather than state reimbursement for so much stuff. So I think it's a really interesting point that you've got to, or you did get to with Trustedoctor, that actually combining healthcare insurance and finance into what is essentially an insurtech product, but then serving that to the healthcare world, was the answer for increasing access and increasing delivery of a certain standard of care to a certain group of people. And that is what solved the problem for you, to the tune of then sharpening up the business and being able to exit for that amount or the rest of it. But it seems like you've managed to merge those three uncomfortable worlds to a solution that worked. So can you talk about that kind of uncomfortability for me, and what it was like building a company in the middle of that, and how that actually turns into value, given the background that you've got and given the fact that you must champion those that are less fortunate?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, and it was paramount for us to navigate this very well, because at some point when we were building, you're right, we actually went to NHS Digital Accelerator, but we quickly realized that our services are not for NHS. It's more for private, private patient units. So yeah, it was very hard, because eventually we were, and this is the thing why we were looking for other solutions, because we got to a point that there were two types of customers that we had initially. Because we actually went to charities and we went to patient advocacy groups. We wanted to give stuff for free, in fact. But also, like, we realized that we had people that were sourced by those charities, and sometimes there were GoFundMe type of initiatives that would pay for treatment, and there were the people who are really rich. So we were like, this is not great. We're building something for a minority of the society. So when we came across in terms of insurance, how do we democratize this? How do we make sure that a regular person can access that? Unfortunately, not always is about the money. It's also about the awareness, because if I tell you that Aviva Global Doctors cost £3 a month in UK as an add-on to your life insurance, you wouldn't believe me. You would do due diligence on it, but it does, because and it gives you access to. I appreciate in this age group, the probability of getting cancer is less, but still, if you do get cancer, you want to navigate this, and many times you have to go further afield internationally to access your to access treatment. So it's about awareness. In UK, people. And you're right. UK is very, very specific, because people are so bought into NHS and they just don't feel like paying out of pocket. For instance, in Poland, arguably much more, still a developing country, we are so used to paying out of pocket because we can't rely on the state to provide us care. So things like blood tests and MRI scans, I would pay out of pocket because it's just, I'm used to that. Now there is also a trap to that, because the services on a relative value basis are much cheaper in Poland, given your purchasing
Yes.
power. Whereas in UK we have this problem that private healthcare is more expensive. Why? Because the payer is insurance, never out of pocket, unless you're a rich person coming on a shopping trip to London or something like that, and and this is the problem, because and also NHS sometimes will rely on private providers. So I think the problem is people don't pay out of pocket, and then also there is the private sector is still relatively small. It's very London centric. It's not the whole England, where when we went to different hospitals around England, they the private patient units, they didn't really have ability to source patients because London was so concentrated. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge. And also, we were operating in Switzerland, where the system is completely different. It's quasi-insured. Everyone is somehow everyone's got a private insurance, and the hospitals are like 5-star hotels. It's kind of obviously it's a smaller country, and so it's just a different model. So we struggle to fit there as well, because everything was so integrated to a hospital. So, so for instance, doctor is owned by a hospital. Whereas in UK, which is another bizarre thing, which is good and bad, doctors are free agents. So, we love the fact that we could tap into individual doctors without having permission from hospitals. But that creates also the problem where, there is no reimbursement structures, like you said. There is no, there's no co-payment. Okay, employers will give you health insurance, but many of the employers will give you cash plans, which are essentially micro-insurance up to a cap. So, and when you get cancer, cash plan won't pay for your treatment. So I think, there was a lot of struggle, but equally, I think I'm really hoping that this will change. I do believe in, and I don't want to spread the wrong gospel, because maybe I don't want to be out of line, because I love NHS and I love this country. But I do believe that we have to co-pay. We have to, the system needs to change, because, and also the problem with NHS, which I found spending so much time in hospitals, we are, NHS is for everything and for everyone, and you can't have that, it's just like, you can't be like everything to everyone, because you're just not going to balance the books. And I never forget how, when I was a banker and I had a private insurance, I had a seizure, and I went to Royal London Hospital, A&E. They took me in. They were so scared that I had something big problem. They did a PET scan for me. They did, there was like 4 doctors looking after me in a space of 2 hours. It was crazy, right? Okay, nowadays it's a bit harder, but it was like 15 years ago. And I walked away from that hospital. I thought, wow, I got that for free. They didn't even ask my name. Like, they didn't ask my insurance, nothing. And I was like, this is incredible on one hand, but scary on the other hand. If that's how the system works, that you could just walk in to a emergency. So there's a lot of challenges, and I think there's a lot of good and bad. Maybe I think that the recipe is for systems to talk to one another and maybe derive best practices. Because I'm not going to say that everything is bad. I love the fact that when you go to US, for instance, and then let's say you lost your job, and you don't have that, insurance window for a couple of months, and then something happens to you, it's crazy, right? Whereas in the UK, it's almost like a pride of the nation. We have it all for free, and sometimes, and people, the Polish people always ask me, NHS is really bad. I was like, why'd you say this? Because when I go to a GP, GP gives me a paracetamol or ask me to drink loads of water. I was like, rightly so, because the Polish GP will prescribe you 10,000 tablets that are being advertised on TV. But I always say NHS is amazing when you're really seriously ill, because that's where the excellence and everything shines through. But obviously the big question is, what about the prevention? And you look at the stats and the screening of patients in the UK versus the Europe it's much less. It's also part of the culture, right? I mean, it's people just people don't want to screen until it's necessary, which arguably it's kind of but it's still, people live quite long, so the system is great, but coming back to your question, I've obviously rambled, but these points are really important to flash out that there are a lot of differences in different systems, and when we were navigating global healthcare, we had to adjust, and also there were some tough decisions to be made, right? So which way we going, and where do we focus, and so obviously insurance. It's incredible model, because if you think about it, yesterday I was selling SaaS to a hospital in UK, let's say, or in Spain, or in Switzerland, and because I'm effectively managing the money of the reinsurer, because the way we do the products, they're reinsurance products. So we put together the product, the insurers will sell it, the reinsurer will basically pay for it. We've got the middle. So overnight, I'd become a payer to a hospital. So you couldn't imagine how incredible that was. I walk into a hospital and suddenly these guys are like, "Oh, Lucas, here's like dinner. Could we do something for you?" Because we were spending a lot of money on our patients, paying top dollar for our international patients in those hospitals. So it was a kind of a mind-opening and eye-opening that this thing really changes the game. But still, we are doing this, on the protection insurance market. Not many people realize these things exist, so there's a lot of awareness that needs to come through. But also, I still believe that in the UK we can really change the system and make it a bit more affordable and accessible. Maybe we just have to pay a bit more. I would be happy to pay like a quasi insurance. Imagine if you pay like, I don't know, 5-10 quid for a cash plan each month. I would pay that for, I would contribute that to an NHS, and then we would have the pot of money then can get redistributed. We could kind of refurbish the hospitals, because that's another thing. The hospitals are like the fortresses in the UK, right? When you go to Spain, and they're like incredible. I mean, it's like 5-star hotels. I mean, everything is seamless. Okay, the language capabilities maybe not there, but everything else is incredible. The doctors are great, and it's you can see that it's all kind of brand new, and it all works because it's affordable. I fear that NHS at some point becomes unaffordable, and then we get these problems, and where it's almost like the private school problem. If the education as a whole degrades in different areas, people with money will resort to private schools, right? So the fear here is if the healthcare standards degrade, people go to private care, but like you said, only the ones that can afford it will be able to access it, and that's wrong. I think I would be happy for all of us to contribute and to prop up the NHS, but also NHS needs to be more cohesive, right? That was another thing that we found. We would talk to different trusts, and they would be doing the different projects, maybe similar projects, but not always they would talk to one another, and. But on the flip side, it's a big organization. There's no many comparables to that. So going back to your original question, when we were building the Trustedoctor and we were navigating, there was a lot of really good insights came through, and there was a lot of tough decisions, and a lot of we just have to be. Eventually, we had to drop our kind of romantic view of the world and be very disciplined about producing results, paying for things, and just be profitable. Because actually, as a group, we were profitable, which was incredible to my standards. And then when we were at the back of exit, I actually paid off all my small investors, and when we were giving money back to investors, it was just so satisfying. It's just incredible. And I remember, like, the other day I was talking to someone about the successes of startups. And the startup success is always defined by the money you've raised, not the money you distributed. And I would actually say, I would love to see that disciplined, given the market conditions right now. It'd be good to see like people aspiring to be, and that goes back to the whole idea of digital health. If digital health is delivering, right, it pays off. Investors will invest more, because I also actually believe that in the future, healthcare companies are going to be the big companies. They're going to be the Googles of this world. Because we realize that the one thing we don't have, and it's precious. It's your health. And so I think there's a lot of potential, but up to this point, it's been really difficult for many companies to extract that value, so that the ideas are there, but maybe the monetization is not yet.
Just going back to your NHS point, I think I saw a quote, a talk, an interview answer from Simon Sinek yesterday, where a company said to him they want to be innovative and they want to be efficient. And he said, that's impossible, because in order to be innovative, you need to be experimental, and you need resource to conduct your experiments so that you can become innovative. You can't have the same metrics for efficiency as you have for innovation. Those two things cannot work together. You can be efficient in one place and innovative in another. You can be efficient in one place to be innovative in another. But that resource needs to be distributed from your efficiency towards your innovation. One worry that I have with the way that healthcare is going and its inaffordability is that the greater that the expectation is of people to receive prevention, diagnosis, treatment across a wider and wider and wider amount of conditions and things, is that the burden of what the budget needs to spread across gets larger. The budget itself gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and then gaps start to appear. Now, it seems that the mindset, at least in the digital health world and the health tech world, is that digital health and health tech can make things more efficient. Well, that's great. But if the resource isn't there for experimentation, because we're running ourselves so thin, because we've run budgets so thin now, there are all these digital health products that can make things more efficient, but there's not the capital available to take the risk on the experiment to do the innovation. So we're in a spot where we've got, to coin a phrase, but a really inappropriate metaphor, you've got a pack of fags with no lighter. Like, you've got all these digital health products and nothing to ignite them into life. You're stuck. You're stuck with a load of startups that require investment but have no payer. You've got a load. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and that feels to me 100%. Like we're in a stalemate almost, where we're not getting the digital health adoption to provide the efficiency to allow the capital to invest in more innovation. Like, that isn't there. So something has to give. And some people argue that pharma are the ones that need to step in and fund things massively, because we're also solving their problems with NHS innovation. Some people argue, like, people argue differently, that it's the responsibility of the entrepreneurs to prove it. It's the responsibility of the entrepreneurs to build the networks. It's the responsibility of the demand side to blah, blah. There's loads of different people that say the responsibility lies in different places, but ultimately, I understand what you're saying. I understand that it's difficult to find that model in the NHS and how that insurance model therefore works. I understand that. I also feel the pride at having a healthcare system that's taxpayer funded, that doesn't discriminate and provides emergency care to the people that actually need it and supports the lowest in society. And there is that Robin Hood effect of me, who cashes them very little on the amount of tax I pay to the NHS, actually giving back per se to those that need it. I enjoy that. And like you rightly say, would I pay more? Yeah, I would pay more. And so I find it, I understand how difficult the position is. And I wonder what gives first. I wonder whether we get the capital injection. I wonder whether that capital injection also comes along with incentives for organizations to take risk, and therefore, by proxy, incentives for organizations to experiment and innovate. But we need to be okay with failing in order for that to be the case. And I just think it was a great clip that I saw, that innovation and efficiency can't be the same thing. Like,
You're nailing this, and because I'll tell you a little parallel, which is very, very simple. Why startup ecosystem in London is so vast, right? Not just because London is a big city. It's because you have the SEIS, EIS scheme, which is unheard of in different countries. So incentives. So basically, as a banker, we all invested in startups not in just real estate and stocks and bonds. We were investing in startups because, for SCIS I was getting 50% back from my taxes.
Yeah, okay. Why wouldn't you?
Probability of success.
Almost.
Exactly. Is risk free if the company makes after 3 years and you sell it, there's no capital gains tax. It's the most beautiful scheme. I went to the ministry in Poland and I said, could we have the same? Because we would prop up the market so much. So imagine if you took that parallel to healthcare. You're right. If there were the right incentives, and actually you summarize it really well, because I look at US, I look at Germany, and I look at Middle East right now. They're the three hub spots for innovation. They'll pay for digital health. These guys are just not. They're investing. They're investing. It's so much easier to sell stuff, digital therapeutics. I don't know, kind of your interesting stuff that, for instance, like Informatica, I'm working for. It's a global leader. It's a company originated in Poland, but it's a global leader in AI assisted triage and symptom checking. Now, yet they don't have one client in UK. They're very big in Germany, very big in US. They in Europe, their client predominantly is insurance. In US, it's the health system. So it's a different, they've got this beautiful methodology, API first. So they'll plug in the way they're useful. But yet in UK, it's been a struggle. So that's why I kind of stepped in. I know the CEO very well, and I said, look, I'm going to try to to unfold this. But it's not been easy because I would love this to be integrated to NHS pathways. So NHS 111. By the way, we've just won a similar tender in Australia. So basically running NHS 111 equivalent in Australia. So why can't we do this in UK? Because there are struggles. There are some roadblocks that you cannot kind of jump over. So I think, NHS needs to, yes, you're right. NHS needs to be a bit more risky in terms of investing in technologies, and then they will realize, because I think it's always a chicken and egg. I remember when we were trying in Digital Accelerator, we're trying to, let's say, implement our platform into one of the trusts, in a small sort of scenario. They said, okay, do a pilot for free. If we see a value, then we will pay for it. I was like, well, it's kind of tough. We have people to pay and things. So in a way, you had to rationalize, the way you do your pilots and things. So you're right. It's that moment. And maybe now, obviously Brexit meant that, your goods trading and your regular businesses are a bit more stricken. So maybe UK, needs to flourish as a sort of services and then healthcare, AI, kind of bioscience giant. So now the government should say, okay, we're going to be this international hub for healthcare, because London is, UK is big on healthcare anyhow, but London is incredibly big because there's so many hospitals and things. There's 6 airports, for goodness sake. It's incredible. So why don't we become like this international hub for healthcare that everyone can come and try it out, like their ideas and stuff. And okay, we'll burn some money. It's the same story with startups, Not all of our ideas will work well, but some of them will, and then we will pivot, and then we'll get to the monetization. And similarly, NHS, if they did kind of treat this as a startup and say, okay, well, let's just leap of faith, let's just invest in all those technologies, but then it actively helped them to embed themselves so they're reimbursed. Maybe that would have been a different story. But I also think it's the culture which needs to change, because I think here. I love the social trust bit, by the way. This is something we don't have in Poland. In UK, the social trust is incredible. Like, I trust you with all my heart until you prove me otherwise. It's the opposite in other countries, right? But what that means is, if I have such a social trust in NHS and HMRC, and like, I may not be so willing to change. And I find myself talking to payers in UK, and they're very difficult to change, right? And because they think it's such an established market, we know our staff really well, and so it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge, but I think It is changing. We're still a big hub here. All we need to do right now is just, find ways to prop up the NHS so they become a bit more proactive. And you're right. If that narrative between efficiency and innovation, it's translated into government action, they will say, okay, because I think, people are reasonable here. If you put a nice narrative around it and the right people hear it out, they say, well, that makes sense, right? They won't say, we're never going to do this because X, Y, and Z. The people will say, so I think now is the time. So I'm really, really hopeful that innovation becomes daily bread, and then maybe NHS becomes that, kind of a reference point to other, nations, how we, do things. Obviously, we still got work to do. The problem is we're firefighting on small stuff. I mean, someone said to me the other day, how can you have, big innovation in NHS if your buildings are crackling, or if you don't have, if you don't have, equipment and, kind of the basics, if you like. So, I mean, I am, one of the business I'm involved in is this, AI assisted triage. We could deploy this to people that they can self-care. Maybe they don't have to go to NHS each time, but just people love going, people love having those consultations with GPs. And so if we somehow, try to see if there's other way, and explaining to people that, we're all doing this for the greater good of everybody else. Because like you said, if you were to pay £5 to £10 a month towards NHS more, you would probably do it. But you would love everyone to join forces and the message and the strategy to be coherent. Because if you pay and others don't pay, you're not going to like that.
No, quite. Listen, Lukasz, we're running out of time here, but I want to ask you one more question before I let you go, which is obviously that following the exit, you've got involved in the AI space. What are you betting on with AI at the minute? You mentioned wanting to really solve a specific problem. You might not want to go into that if you're still in stealth, but how are you seeing the boom of AI at the minute, and where do you think the problems actually are that need solving?
So that's, great question. And, when I stepped away, I thought, okay, how do I, what's the next thing? And I didn't immediately think AI, because I don't want to do the hype thing. Everyone was talking about sort of generative and AI. But what I've realized, all the businesses that I got involved have actually got the common denominator AI. So one of the business one business I'm actually a founder of, and we're in stealth, is basically an AI discovery engine platform in biotech. We've got great science focused on healthy aging. So in a nutshell, I'm not going to be really scientific here. We are connecting diseases. Creating molecular pathways, and then through those pathways we find common denominators, and then we intervene through drugs in those common denominators, and we have this one patent for one indication that has got multiple applications. So your typical situations where you have one drug, one disease, or one molecule, one target, and then you sort of test the water. We have multiple drugs for kind of multiple applications through that pathway. So that's really exciting. I think AI. So I wouldn't say it's a AI from a start. We're actually building the AI on top of the science that we've developed. We've got this kind of classification model, and we put AI just to make it scalable. So that's the first one. Now the second one, as I said, is I'm advising Informatica. It's a bread and butter business. I believe it's a symptom checker, which is API first. So basically, you can sort of plug this in on an app, on a portal, call center, and it gives you that. It's AI driven, so basically could give you that instant access to healthcare recommendation, and it's very, very smart. They've done this for 11 years, but they've actually started making money in the last 5 years, which is incredible. How this whole maturity of AI application. And it had to happen. And Informatica is in 35 countries, works across all the verticals. And now we can see the scalability of it. So again, people talk about, generative AI will take over and will just kind of eat all those companies alive. I think generative AI is very, very useful, and it will be kind of, you could plug it in to that spectrum, but still having a solid medical, kind of certified symptom checker is still it's still something that is very, regulation is quite high on this. And there's over 50 doctors overseeing the tool, which gives me a lot of comfort. We've done 13 million interviews. It's solid, right? But still, the adoption needs to happen in a greater sense. Whereas I've also recently invested in a company that focuses on male fertility, and basically just developed this world's first device that you can get your biomarkers, your sperm biomarkers at home through AI, through basically a hardware and software combination. And the software underpins AI because essentially you're recording sperm, right? And then the AI the software, it kind of reads through the sperm, which is quite fascinating. So really big on that. I think it's, again, solving real problems. I'm a father to be. I'm 40. Not the youngest of fathers. I may not have the problem. I would love to know my health through different biomarkers. I think sperm is kind of undiscovered, if I may say so. It tells you a lot about men's health, and also the fact that on the market you've got so many femtech initiatives, but there's not enough companies focusing on men's health. I think that's very exciting. So I'm looking at companies that really solve the real problem. I've also invested in some companies like a medication management company in the UK, where basically sucks in the data from EMIS and basically tells you if your pills and things are clashing. I think it's just incredible. We're over medicated in Poland. That's why I'm so believing these boys going to really deliver this in UK. Take this to Poland. So every investment, every advisor I do has got something like a real problem to solve. Most of them are AI driven, because I think AI really helps to make it scalable, to make it a bit more nimble. But not to say that AI is everything. I think you still have to have the proper medical backbone. You still have to have the real payer that needs to pay for it. So I do believe in the vision where your Googles and Microsofts of this world will provide something incredible and scalable through our watches and whatever. Maybe that's the vision in the future, but we're nowhere near that. I think it helps to get that conversation going, but I'm more kind of, I've got my feet on the ground. I want to know that I'm solving niche area similar to the telemedicine front. Look, I mean, we've built telemedicine, and then COVID came, and suddenly everything is telemedicine, right? And it's a commodity. So video calls no longer a proposition. Everyone does that, right? So maybe generative and AI is going to become this kind of common playing field, and then people build on it. So what Informatica did early on, which was really, really clever, 5-6 years ago, they thought, okay, let's focus on APIs. Let's not focus on a platform per se, because the platform would mean that you go to different providers, they already have legacy systems that you have to kind of plug yourself into. So I'm also thinking that we're coming to a point where there's so much innovation with AI, but also we need to make sure that it all kind of fits in together. So the patient pathway is undeterred and it's seamless. So I think we've got a lot of challenges, but I'm really excited that AI is no longer a fancy word. It's actually a tangible thing. People understand there's so much stuff going on in radiology with AI, or there's so much around sort of data management. I love these sort of systems that can mine the data of the patient, and then maybe flash out people for clinical trials and things like that. So there's a lot of excitement, but also tangible applications, which I'm really excited for, and obviously this will continue. I don't like that overhyping anything, because when you overhype, then there's winners and losers, right? Obviously we've seen what happened to Babylon, and obviously I was a big fan of the vision. because I think the vision was grand and people really believed in the story that you give scalably healthcare to in people's pockets. But also there are some challenges, and we have to learn from it, and there will be. I really hope that there's going to be a lot more unicorns in this space where people master the model so well that everyone buys it, and because the healthcare world is vast, right? There's providers, there's insurers, there's all sorts, and so if the world becomes a bit more tech savvy, you have a big market to play, and but we're still early stage, and I would every high level conversation that I have, I always kind of tone it down. I'll say, well, let's test it. Let's see how this fits in. And so I like these niche applications because this way you can really test the water on something smaller, and then maybe you roll it out onto a bigger vision.
Awesome. Lukasz, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Awesome stuff that you've been involved in. Obviously, growing Trustedoctor from start to finish, growing up in Wolverhampton, a massive highlight of your life. Congratulations for having done so. Absolutely. And yeah, uniting healthcare, insurance and finance is not easy. And actually to do that in a business model that works, that aligns with the values that you have, I think you've done incredibly well. And now obviously trying to invest and spend your time and create new companies that really fit with that vision of where you want healthcare to be. So as I say, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? You a LinkedIn guy? You an email guy?
I'm a LinkedIn guy. I also I do put email out as well, so happy to respond on any. It's funny that I do actually get quite a lot of LinkedIn requests. But I'm always happy to engage and help. Very much like I've seen how it was for me when I was kind of starting out. So if you've got an idea or you want to test something or you just want access to someone, happy to always to do that.
Beautiful. Absolute pleasure, Lukasz. Thank you.